With us on the show right now, Mr. Scott Lewis, the Texas Legislative Director with Students for Concealed Carry on Campus. By the way, please do not repeat that about Sheila E. because it's completely false. I don't want that urban legend getting out there. I'm not even sure that Sheila E. knew who John Hancock was, to be perfectly honest with you. Scott, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing good, Cam. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, it is my pleasure. I got to tell you, this piece you wrote in the San Antonio Express News, campus concealed carry bill, no laughing matter. I think this, I called it brilliant, Scott. I think it is. I think this may be one of the best summations of the campus carry argument that I have ever seen written down on paper. It's just fantastic.
Well, thank you. I'm actually surprised that this editorial is getting so much coverage because I was actually a little disappointed when it ran because the newspaper chopped it down by about 85 words, which is quite a bit. I mean, usually, if you take 20 words out of an editorial, that's a pretty good cut. So I was kind of feeling like it got butchered, and then everybody had such a positive response to it. I guess maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought.
No, I think it's really good. And let's get to it. I mean, you talk about Conan O'Brien joking about campus carry. And you say, sadly, late-night comedians aren't the only ones making jokes about legislators' efforts to legalize licensed concealed carry at Texas colleges. You say recently editorialists and bloggers across the country jumped to the opportunity to portray Texas legislators as backwards cowboys who refuse to let go of the Wild West and trade in their six-shooters for iPhones. Such stereotype-based caricatures don't reflect reality. Now, one of the arguments that you point out here, Scott, and it's probably, I don't know, I think it's the most common argument against campus carry that we hear. This is from the online magazine collegecandy.com. Can you imagine a frat party where the guys are allowed to have their guns? Nothing about that says good idea to me. And that's what we hear, because these college students, they're too drunkards. They do too much drugs, Scott. They can't be trusted.
Right, and as I pointed out in the article, that's a very compelling argument until you consider that this pending legislation won't affect fraternity houses. It also won't affect bars. It won't affect off-campus apartments. It won't affect tailgating events or any of these places where students are presumed to, drink or engage in high-risk activity. It's strictly affecting, campus buildings. It's affecting classrooms, cafeterias, lecture halls, libraries. I can't remember the last time that somebody walked into my 9:30 a.m. Russian class hauling a keg of beer. This is a classic case of people conflating college campuses with college life. I mean, college campus is, like I said, it's the buildings. College life is everything that we associate kind of with this animal house mentality or whatever. We're not talking about keeping guns out of the hands of college students. What we're proposing isn't going to change who can buy a gun. It's not going to change who can obtain a concealed handgun license. It'll affect the ability of few, if any, college students to have a gun in the home. What it's going to do is allow the same trained, licensed, carefully screened adults age 21 and above who are carrying guns in places like churches and movie theaters and shopping malls and grocery stores and restaurants and banks and even the Texas Capitol to do so in the buildings of college campuses.
Yeah. All right. So the next argument, this is from the Los Angeles Times. A student firing back at a gunman in a crowded classroom might pose as much of a risk to his fellow students as the assailant. In other words, well, this isn't going to make anything better, Scott. In fact, this could make things 100,000 times worse.
Right, and my response to that, which was cut from the San Antonio's version of the editorial, was I guess being from L.A., we can forgive the Los Angeles Times for confusing reality with a Michael Bay movie. But, real-life shootouts, contrary to what Hollywood might have us believe, don't involve 10 minutes of people diving over desks and ducking behind doorways to reload. According to the FBI, according to every police academy out there, most real-world shootouts last less than 10 seconds. How is 10 seconds of exchanged gunfire between two armed individuals aiming at each other possibly going to lead to greater loss of life than a 10-minute uncontested execution-style massacre like the one we saw at Virginia Tech, where the assailant walked from classroom to classroom, going up aisle after aisle, shooting people in the head, at point-blank range 4 to 6 times.
Yeah. And, it had to be said, Scott. I know that might make some people uncomfortable, but this is, I think this is the crux of the argument, because we've been hearing from the gun control advocates, including people who were there at Virginia Tech, that a gun in the hands of a student or a professor wouldn't have made a difference. That the outcome was set in stone, apparently, from the moment that killer walked through the door. And I think there are a lot of people who don't believe that is true. In fact, who know, as you say, that that is not true.
Well, I find it interesting that our opponents say they get mad at us if we even suggest that that perhaps concealed carry could have made a difference. We never say emphatically it would have made a difference. We can't know that for sure.
Right.
But if we even suggest it could have, they become very defensive. It offends them at some very deep level. But then when someone like Amanda Collins, a young woman from Nevada who spoke up last week and said that if she'd been allowed to carry her concealed handgun on campus, she probably could have prevented her violent sexual assault at a campus parking garage at the University of Nevada. When she comes forward, everybody immediately jumps out and goes, oh, well, you really couldn't have stopped that. There's nothing you could have done. They have no problem playing armchair quarterback to the victims on our side of the debate. But whenever we suggest that possibly all these students at Virginia Tech who had time to take out their cell phones and talk to 911 operators possibly could have drawn a weapon, taken aim, and fired, suddenly we're insensitive. And so I think there's definitely, in the way this is perceived, a little bit of a double standard there.
I think it definitely is. And again, I think it's for the most egregious of reasons. The mainstream media loves the emotional argument in favor of gun control, but when again somebody with a compelling personal story that didn't embrace gun control, because again this happened on a gun-free campus, University of Nevada, that sexual predator should not have had a firearm on campus because it was against the rules, but he did. When they are confronted with this reality that their gun-free zones don't work, that they only disarm the good people, that they only do things like prevent somebody like Amanda Collins from defending herself or trying to protect herself, they just don't want to deal with that reality, Scott. I think frankly, I wonder if it's too threatening for them.
Well, I think that's why we see this issue discussed so often in jokes and insults and things like that. If we're talking about Conan O'Brien, I expect him to make, kind of flippant remarks and casual jokes that may not really match the facts. That doesn't insult me. What insults me is when I tune in and see, a reporter on MSNBC or CNN or Fox News saying something, disparaging about the people who are proposing this, or when I look at the New York Times or one of these, news, USA Today or one of these newspapers, and they're talking about the Wild West and kind of making all these silly analogies and is this going to be the new school supply list? It's books, notebooks, paper, gun, and all of this stuff. It's insulting that people won't sit down and kind of look at the facts of this issue, because the facts of the issue are very compelling, and that they really get glossed over. I mean, we had Senate committee hearings today, and it was just hours and hours of emotional appeal from people who basically would not feel comfortable sitting in a classroom with a gun. Now, never mind that they have no problem sitting in a movie theater or a church or any of these other places with a gun. Never mind that these college campuses are open environments where they really already have no idea if somebody might be carrying a gun, because apparently they're much more concerned with the trained, licensed, carefully screened adults seeking the means to carry guns legally than with the untrained, unlicensed, unscreened criminals who may already be carrying guns illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what the argument kind of boils down to for the opposition. Is it's a series of one-line insults, and kind of that's why so many of the news stories. If you watch the news stories about this, do they go find a couple of experts on the issue and sit down and really hash out the issues? No, they walk around a college campus with a camera and a microphone, and they stop random students and they say, "Hey, what do you think about letting students carry guns in class?" And you get a lot of crazy knee-jerk reactions from people who don't know the issue. They've never stopped and thought about this, and they go, "Oh my God, somebody's going to get mad. They're going to go to a frat party or whatever," and that becomes the whole story. It's 5 minutes of that, and then we're on to the next whatever flavor of the month is, and we haven't really discussed the issue at all. All we've discussed is how people feel about the issue. And so, I wrote another article recently where I said, a lot of reporters seem to be, foregoing the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, why, and how, in favor of the 1 F, feelings. That's really all we're getting out of these stories anymore. And I think it's because it's very intimidating for them to address the issues, the facts of the issue at hand, because it doesn't allow them to paint the story with the brush they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, Scott, I think you did a fantastic job of addressing these arguments and calmly and firmly refuting them. Now, later this week, what's expected to happen there in Texas on the concealed campus issue?
Well, right now we are waiting for a committee vote from the Senate. The Senate left the bill pending today, so they're apparently going to deliberate and vote here in the next couple of days. So, definitely anybody out there who is a registered voter in Texas can be calling in to the members of the Senate Criminal Justice Committee, and you can look that up. Just Google Texas Legislature and look up the Criminal Justice Committee. Also, the House version of the bill is currently pending before the House Calendars Committee. So we could definitely use phone calls from Texas voters to either of those groups, the House Calendars Committee or the Senate Criminal Justice Committee. And from there, we're hoping to get floor votes. And I mean, everybody in the media is portraying this like, this is already a done deal. But the truth is, you can't count your chickens before they hatch. And this is far from a done deal. There are so many ways that a bill can die that we definitely need everybody who can voice an opinion to voice an opinion.
Yeah. In fact, how are you doing in terms of the time? I mean, I know that Texas meets every other year for 140 days, so it's a relatively short session, all things considered. Is the timing of the bill still all right?
Well, we've still got enough time to do it. The problem is we've still got some very big bills left on the House and Senate calendars. The House is still going to take up the voter ID bill, which is what, last year it died because we got caught behind a filibuster of the voter ID bill.
Uh-huh.
They still have to take up the state budget. They still have to take up redistricting. So there's some very big bills that if we don't move forward, we may get stuck in a logjam behind them and just never see the light of day. So we definitely have to move forward now. We can't wait until the end of May, which is when the session ends. And anybody who's unfamiliar with this issue, if you want to learn the talking points, go to campuscarry.com, and there's a little red link up the top. It says this bill is currently pending before the Texas legislature. Click on that red link at campuscarry.com, and you're going to see all the facts, statistics, and arguments supporting this. And what we need to do is just educate as many people as possible. I mean, educate, anytime you hear somebody talking about what a crazy idea this is, take 5 minutes and just ask them, well, what do you really know about it? And see if you can't maybe enlighten them just a little bit.
All right, Scott, thank you again, sir, and look forward to doing this again soon.
Well, thank you. We sure appreciate it.
Scott Lewis, the Texas Legislative Director with Students for Concealed Carry on Campus.